morning, Good News Church. Welcome to another Sunday. This Sunday is special where we get to serve together. In just a few moments, it's a breezy and it's a hot one, but stay tuned because 48 hours from now, we're probably going to be shoveling our driveway. So that's Colorado. Welcome, those of you who are with us, worshiping and serving physically in person this morning. We want to give a special shout out and welcome to those who are watching either right now or you're up in the mountains, you're on vacation, and you will watch sometime throughout the week. We just want to welcome everyone this morning. This is a special Serve Day Sunday. We still get a chance to sing, we still get a chance to hear an awesome message, and we get a chance to come together and be able to serve, whether we're in person or at home. So thank you so much for being here this morning. One very important announcement this morning: if you had a chance to watch last week's service, and I would encourage you to go do that if you didn't get to do that, because what last week's service did was it really set up why live groups, why being together, serving together, loving one another, doing all those one another's you see in the New Testament, why those are so important. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be starting up a semester of live groups, and I would argue that now more than ever is the most important time to make sure that we're not on this journey on our own, but that we're doing this thing together. We're figuring it out together. We're serving others together, because that's what church actually means. It means together. And so our live group sign-up started off last week. They continue on this week and into the next week. If you ever got one of these physical bulletins, I would invite you to look through that brochure, and it's going to give you information on every single live group. We have a live group that meets every night of the week, Monday through Friday. We have live groups that are going to be meeting in person. We have live groups that are going to be meeting on Zoom. And we have some live groups that are even going to do both. So whatever your preference may be, it's going to work out for you. So check that out. It's all in the brochure. It's also in the e-bulletin that you would have received. And it goes through the details of every live group, how they're meeting, some of those different details. You can even reach out to the live group leader and ask them, so how's this going to work? What are we going to do? Or you could, of course, reach out to me with any questions that you may have. We just encourage you to sign up and become a part of a live group this semester. It's very simple. It's completely paperless. It's completely digital. If you have the church app, and I'd encourage you to get that if you don't have it. There are instructions for that as well on our church website, goodnewschurch.org, as well as in the e-bulletin that you should have received. There's instructions on how to download that. It's super, super easy. You just go into the app and under events, you just click sign up for a live group and just tap my name, and you're just saying the names of the people that you want to sign up and which live group you want to sign up for. Boom, you're done. Or you could go onto the church website again, goodnewschurch.org, and you could just email me, again, the names of the people that are going to sign up and the live group that you want to be a part of. We really invite and encourage you to do that. We need each other now more than ever. And right now, we're going to sing together. Pastor Mike.
Shall I fear? You crush the enemy underneath my feet. You are my sword and shield, though troubles linger still. Whom shall I fear? I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. My strength is in your name, for you alone can save. You will deliver me. Yours is the victory. Whom shall I fear? Whom shall I fear? side, the one who reigns forever. He is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. And nothing formed against me shall stand. Oh, you hold the whole world in your hands. I'm holding on to your promises. You are faithful. You are faithful. And nothing formed against me shall stand. Oh, you hold the whole world in your hands. I'm holding on to your promises. You are faithful. You are faithful. You are faithful. I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever. He is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever. He is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The God of angel armies is always by my side. My hope is built on nothing less. In Jesus' blood and righteousness, I dare not trust the sweetest free, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. When darkness seems to hide its face, I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. My anchor holds within the veil. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak makes strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. He shall come with trumpet sound. Oh, may I then in Him be found. Dressed in His righteousness alone, for to stand before the throne. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is the Lord, Lord of all. Christ alone, Christ alone, cornerstone. Lord of all. Father, we thank you for that this morning, that you are Lord of all. Even as we prayed earlier today, we thought about the reality that you are in charge of time. Lord, you operate outside of our time frames and even our desires. And we thank you for your sovereignty in that. We thank you for not giving us people the hands of time. And we thank you that you have not made us God, even though we try to be so often. So, Father, we just ask in these moments as we turn our attention to you, that you would fill this place with your presence, that we would know you. We would know the reality of what it means to have a cornerstone that never breaks, that is always there, that is strong and faithful. Thank you for your loving kindness towards us. It is everlasting, your word says.
Well, good morning, good news. Thank you for being here today, whether you're with us in person or online. We are so excited to have you here on this special day. Now is the time of service that we receive the tithes and offerings, and what's super cool about today is any of the tithes and offerings that are given today will go back to the Voice of the Martyrs, the organization that we're supporting through the med kits. And this is the organization that helps persecuted Christians around the world have supplies and resources that they need to make life happen in these scary times. And so, again, anything you give today goes back to either purchasing postage to send the med kits or just to give to the Voice of the Martyrs so that they can use it as they see fit. So thank you so much for being a generous church. We appreciate all that you do and the exciting things that are happening through Voice of the Martyrs.
So good morning, good news. I'm Michael Craig. I'm the worship and outreach pastor here. And today we're going to be talking about UB4ME in the context of serving, but we're going to couch it in our story. I have a story. God has a story. You have a story. Our neighborhood has a story. And when we go 1,000 miles away, they have a story. And when we go on the other side of the world, like we're going to affect today, they have stories as well. So what I found in the church oftentimes is we are reluctant to candidly share our story. We're reluctant to kind of share that the gospel was necessary in our lives and why the gospel was necessary. And sometimes, Paul said that he would boast in his weakness, right? And oftentimes as we share our story, we kind of let walls down with other people, and they're like, well, maybe I could share my story. Maybe I could make the gospel relevant in some ways. So I'm going to share a snippet of my story over the last couple of years. I'll give you a real fast walk through how I got to Colorado, and then kind of walk you through a little more details in the last few years. But I'm going to share my story. We're going to remember Jesus' story, and then we're going to look at the story of people around us that need to hear this gospel. So I was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I know that some of you guys have kind of not had the opportunity to get to know me as well in this whole COVID time, and we're not bumping and rubbing shoulders and stuff as much as we might normally have if we were doing church in normal ways. But I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I got married at 20 years old. My wife was much older than me at 21. So this 1 year, just a kid joke. So we got married, and I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? What is something that resonates with me? And I went into law enforcement. I did that for several years, worked the road as a regular cop. I was a canine officer. I was also a detective and saw all kinds of crazy stuff because Fayetteville is kind of a crazy city with lots of crazy stories. And I got to do that, and I was doing ministry for several years, kind of bivocationally, and worked at a church in North Carolina for lots of years, and eventually moved to Maryland with my family, my wife, and my 5 kids. So I have 3 boys and 2 girls. We moved to Maryland, and we stayed there for several years. We had some great work experiences, and we had some that were challenging. Anybody who works in church knows that you always get some of both of that. And then we moved to Mississippi, where I had lots of great friends, still do have a lot of great friends. And we served at a church there for several years and doing worship and other executive team leadership type of stuff. I was able to serve there, and it was really good. I'm still really good friends with the pastor there. He's moved on to another church, but we keep in contact. We keep in relationship with each other. His wife has written a few books for another church that I used to work at. We worked some curriculum out and stuff. Just great relationship. But we wanted to be in Colorado. My wife and my family, we've been through Colorado several times, and we were our Jeep people, and so we come do some off-roading in Colorado, did some off-roading in Moab. I'm going to do that in a few weeks here as well. And we just felt like the Colorado was home, and that's where God was calling us. And so God opened up a door. I moved to Colorado with the church as the executive pastor and worship pastor, and was responsible for kind of the daily responsibilities of the staff and all. There were some dynamics that existed in the staff prior to me getting here that I knew nothing about, that kind of took effect after I got here, and it affected the church in some significant ways that really just led us to a place where financially it wasn't viable and it didn't make sense to be there. But I kind of wrestled with this idea: do I really want to keep doing this church thing? I've done the church, not attendance or engagement involvement, but like as an employee kind of relationship. Did I want to do that? So I wrestled with that for several months, and this church that I worked for was a church that my whole family had engaged in. My wife was running the children's ministry, and my girls were involved in the children's ministry. We were doing a mobile church setup kind of thing, and my boys, they were involved in the music ministry, and they would go early with me and set up the PA and kind of do what we're doing here, but on a lot more instruments and stuff because we were in a school. And so I wrestled with, do I want to do like ministry vocationally? Well, in September 2015 is when we moved here, and in 2017, that's when those dynamics kind of got where it made sense for me to not be there. And that was in July of 2017. Well, in September, I'm still trying to figure things out, still trying to figure out what I'm going to do vocationally and all. And I find out that my son, at that point, he was 18 years old. He had, like my whole family, had experienced some church hurt and just kind of got to a place where he was like, hey, I'm just kind of frustrated with things right now. And we found out that he and his girlfriend, well, she was pregnant. And it was like, okay, the timing of this isn't really awesome, but we'll make it through this together. We'll be a team. We'll be a family. We always have had that strong value as a family that we would be a team and we would help each other out. So we found that out on September 20th, and found that out in some unique circumstances, but it was obvious that God was there and He was present in unfolding that. Well, September 25th, 5 days later, and again, I just kind of left a church employment. I'm trying to figure out my church employment stuff, and my son that needed a ride to work, I was going to use his car and take him to work because we had another vehicle, it was Gloria's vehicle, that needed the drive shaft replaced. It had some U-joints that were bad and all that. And so I asked my younger son, I asked Isaiah, he was 16 at the time, I said, hey son, the front drive shaft, we've always been kind of mechanically inclined. The front drive shaft on this Jeep, it just needs to be pulled out. If you pull that out while I take your brother to work, I'll come back home, and when I get back home, I'll take that drive shaft, we'll run it to the store, we'll get the U-joint switched out, we'll get that taken care of, right? And so that's what we did. He got under there, I said, hey, it's these bolts, take that out. It's an all-wheel drive vehicle. I say that for a reason. We'll learn in a minute. So I take my my middle son to work, and then I get a call while I'm on the way back from that. And it's my youngest daughter, and she's pretty heightened. She's upset. Dad, you got to get home. You got to get home. Something's wrong. Something's going on. And as a law enforcement officer, I've dealt with lots of high stress situations. So my natural tendency there, when things get stressful, is to calm down. Tell me what's going on. Speak clearly. She couldn't tell me. She didn't know. All that she knew is she heard her brother outside screaming, and I later find out that she thinks that somebody is, trying to get into the house and there's something going on. And so I hung up. I'm driving home, pretending like I'm a cop when I'm driving home, but I wasn't a cop anymore. And so I called back in about a minute or so. I said, hey, more information. Do you have anything else? And she really didn't have enough information to let me know what was going on. But when I drove up, that Jeep that had been in the driveway that slanted was in the road. It's in the road because it had run over my son after he did what I asked him to do. And me being dad, who's protective, failed to put chocks under the tires or pull the emergency brake because I didn't realize that when you pull the drive shaft out on an all-wheel drive vehicle, that disengages the transfer case, and then the transfer case is basically open with the transmission there. And so here it is, my son, he's laying in the driveway, and he's hurt. He just got run over across the lower part of his body, and he was in a lot of pain, and he's keeping it together. And so I, again, back to the law enforcement stuff, I just laid down. I started talking to him and asking him, what's going on, son? Where are you hurting? I gave the girls some things to do to kind of keep them busy, and bring some pillows and blankets just to get their minds on some different things. And so, I'm a very protective, passionate, love my kids kind of dad. And so I'm looking at this, and a neighbor brings over a vehicle and says, hey, you can use my vehicle to take him to the hospital if you want to. But what we find out is he really can't get up because his femur is broken at the L. And so he's in extreme pain. We call an ambulance. We get him on the way, and I wanted to make sure we took care of those logistics first. I tell my wife, I call her, she's at work. Hey babe, this is what happened. This is where he's headed. Please don't speed. I'll see you there. And so we go there, and they put some screws in his leg and get that kind of going over. Well, just so happens that I was interviewing with a church while that's going on. So one of my interview actually happened in a waiting room. One of the interviews happened in a waiting room at the hospital. That was kind of weird. And had great conversations in that interview, had lots of good promises in that interview. By the time I got employed there, some of those promises didn't happen, but I won't unpack that. So within a couple of days, I start working at this church. My son gets the surgery. I'm feeling like, wow, that's not an awesome dad kind of thing. I'm feeling a lot of responsibility in that. And Gloria, asked me, hey, I've got to ask you this one time, like, why didn't you chock the tires? Why didn't you? And I said, I have no excuse. I have no reason. Like, that was my fault. And I had to kind of deal with that and the the recovery that came with that. So I start this job in October, right? It's the end of September. My son gets run over. October, I start the new job. I start working there. Well, within about a week or so of that job starting, my son has a baby on the way. We find out that her brother, who's about, I don't know, I think it was like 22, 23-ish, something like that. He buys a motorcycle in the Loveland area, and he wrecks it and kills himself on that the same day. And so I facilitated that funeral. It was a really peculiar way to start to engage with a family that I otherwise did not really have a relationship with. So that was a little bit challenging for all of us. And then the second Sunday, I think it was the second Sunday in October of that year, this would have been 2018, I'm working at this church, and the second Sunday in, I'm driving down I-25, and at 6:40 in the morning, a different Jeep, my drive shaft of my Jeep Wrangler, that I've replaced the engine and transmission in at a tune of over $10,000 because they're stupidly overpriced. I had replaced that, and so my drive shaft drops out on I-25 as I'm doing 75 miles an hour or so. Everything went to slow motion. I realize what's going on. I hear the noise. I see cars behind me I can't get over. I'm trying to brake. And so I finally am able to slow down enough while I'm literally thinking, this drive shaft is going to catapult me and I'm going to flip like right here on the interstate. Thankfully, that didn't happen. We pulled over, we as in me and my guardian angel, I don't know. We pulled over, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like, all right, what am I going to do here? It's my second Sunday. I need to get there. It's a big church. It's a big team. There's a lot going on. I've got to get. You can't be late your second Sunday, right? Even if you destroy your car. So I'm sitting there. I'm trying to figure that out. And what I figure out is that smoke smell from my Jeep is my Jeep, and it didn't take too long to figure out it smelled like smoke because it was on fire. The drive shaft had blown up. The transfer case had blown up. It had somehow caught the gas tank on fire, and as I looked, the right rear tire, it was on fire. So I said, at that point, enough of life and challenges have happened. I was just like, blow up if you want to. I don't care. Just don't hurt anybody driving by. So I walked away. I called the fire department. Of course, they got there as quick as they could, and they eventually put the fire out, but the Jeep was totaled. So that wasn't too awesome anyway. So I'm trying to figure the job thing out. I had just started at this new job. Finances were tight and associate, that kind of dynamic. So I purchased a nice, 1856 Subaru or something like that. Maybe it may have been a year or two newer than that. But I purchased a Subaru that was, it smelled like it was on fire most of the time, but as far as I know, it never burned while I owned it. And so I worked at that next church job, and I have a high inner responsibility for integrity, especially within the church environment. And I think that the Bible prescribes certain character requirements, if you will, and how we treat people, that the Bible mandates that. And who you hooked yourself to as a leader, that matters. Who you follow, who you show your support for, that matters. And so I saw things in the organization perpetually that were not things that I perceived lined up with my values, and I would even argue biblical values. And so I was left with a dilemma. Do I continue to take care of my family and pay the bills and do life that way and do what I'm told to do, but treat people in ways that I'm not willing to treat people? Do I do that, or do I stand for principle in this moment and make a really hard decision? So my wife and I wrestled with that for some time, and we both came to the probably not real normal decision of, well, you can't keep doing that, because you can't sleep with a clear conscience if you support that. And if you're getting money to violate your values, there's some professions that do that, but I can't do that. So we had to make the hard decision in February that we were going to transition away from that. So here I am again, trying to figure life out, trying to figure finances out. And a couple months after that, we had some not too far family members that made some accusations against our family, that created some dynamics that we felt like it was best to disconnect there, and that was not that easy. And Led just kind of helped out the following Easter at a church, and I met my buddy there to get paid for helping that church. And that awesome Subaru had a tree run out in front of it in a parking lot. Who felt like an idiot? Yeah, I totaled a Subaru worth 10 cents in a parking lot in this silly journey of what's going on in my life. And so following that, in July 18, Morgan, my 14-year-old yellow lab, died. And I'm wrestling. I'm like, hey God, did you know I'm still alive? Do you know that I'm still here, and I need some help? And so my wife is working, and she's doing well, but kind of what she was doing, and I'm training dogs on the side during this time. The combination of those things wasn't enough to really make life float and make life happen. And so I'm still a dad, I'm still a father, I'm trying to figure these things out. And December of 2018, we got to a place where my wife had helped out, and she had done as much as she could, but the dynamics of everything were so much that I saw the pressure and the stress of life in her world, in her eyes, the relational tension and all. It was really high. And so again, being a person of principle, I said, okay, it doesn't make sense to lose my wife's income in this moment, because we really need that. So what do? I encouraged my wife to quit her job, go stay with my mother at the beach for about a month or so. I said, you go take care of you. I said, the finances are my problem. We'll figure that out, but you've got to take care of you. I don't want me asking you to do anything. I don't want the kids asking you to do anything. Go do whatever you want to. Take care of you. Get up when you want to. Go when you want to. Nap at the beach when you want to. Go take care of you. And so that's what she did. And as she's leaving, I finally I get this job secured that's going to be a pretty good job, working for a company based out of Alabama. and they do this canine explosive detection stuff. So I took my dog, we went and got certified, but I went there in the beginning of January of 2019, and so I go there in 2019, and I take my dog, and we start the first week. Yeah, it was the first week. So we start work, we start training, and I'm on a break. Gloria is in Myrtle Beach. She's hanging out there. I'm scrolling through Facebook, and my stepsister, I see a comment, and it says, please pray, Dad's in hospital, not breathing. So I find out that my dad dies on Facebook. And I was like, let's just check that block too. So I had to leave my new job, not leave, like they let me off. They're a great company. They let me off. I went, I did the funeral, and took care of that type of piece. Went back, completed my training, and when I was done with my training, it was one of those things where I had to basically raise my hand when I got the job and say, hey guys, I will go wherever you need help. We work out of like large airports and stuff like that, doing explosive detection. So I said, okay, I'm willing to go wherever because I need to take care of my family, right? So I completed the training January, February, came back in March, and I'm waiting for them to say, hey, we need you to go to fill in the blank city. So we just decided to add a little bit more to that. Gloria, we found out in March, had a brain tumor. And so it was like, okay, let's just check the block on that too. Let's just add that to the situation. So we did. We added that to it, and we found out that if you have to have a brain tumor, the kind that Gloria had was the best type to have. It was a meningioma. It's like on the outside of the casing of the brain. So they did brain surgery. They pulled it out, and they did that a couple of months later in May. And so June of 2019, we were pretty much financially busted in so many ways, and we're trying to figure out life. Again, I'm sharing my story, not for pity. There is a point here. So in 2019, we basically sold everything we owned, including our bed, and put whatever would fit in a 4x8 trailer, and we went with the company that I was working for to Miami, where we lived in an RV park for, about 7 months. We lived in an RV park in a like 35-foot trailer. It was a pretty cool RV park, and it was nice to live in southern Miami. We went to the Keys a lot. I probably went to the beach, 30 times. We went to the beach on Christmas Eve, last Christmas Eve, and it was like in the 80s, and it was beautiful. But the problem was when we left here, I had 3 boys, 2 of which had gotten married also within that year time frame. So I facilitated those weddings on top of everything going on. So these 2 boys get married. My second son, he has a baby at this point. So we add that dynamic. Me and Gloria, we have a new grandchild, right? And so what do we have to do? We've got to move to Miami. What are my boys going to do? They're going to stay here where they're doing well. They've got good jobs. And so we ripped the Band-Aid off of 3 kids at once, plus grandkid. That wasn't real... it wasn't real tough in those moments. That was difficult to do. It was hard to do. So we moved away. We stayed in an RV park, and then we thought we were going to move into a townhouse, and all of a sudden we just didn't have peace with that. So what did we do? Me and Gloria, my 2 daughters, and my 2 dogs, we moved into an extended stay with 2 queen beds, about the size of this covering, it seemed like. And so that's where we live for the next 2 months, 2.5 months or so, as we're trying to figure out life and what's next. And so a buddy of mine, he calls me, he's in Colorado, and he says, hey, do you want to come lead worship at our church? And I said, hey, sure, fly me out, it'll be a great time, I'll be able to see my boys, and that's what he did. So I get to Colorado, I'm driving down I-25, and I said, hey, I'm back home. I felt like I was back home, and I felt like that was what was going to happen. Went back to our bedroom in Florida, and I said, hey, I think we're moving back to Colorado. And I had no idea, I didn't have a path for that. And then God made a path for that, and Good News Church is kind of part of that path and how we got here. Well, that's great, Michael. Thank you for sharing a sad story. There's another side of that coin. The other side of that coin was during the time where I'm trying to figure out as a dad how to take care of life and how to take care of children and wife and all. My son stepped up to the plate. I've estimated probably over $10,000 in bills and rent that they paid, taking care of not only us, but taking care of themselves as well. I had a brother and his then wife. They gave us over time probably over $6,000 just to help us live. They were a part of God's story in rescuing us. Had some friends, Richard and Laura, they gave us probably $5,000+ of just here, we want to help out. We want to love you. We want to practically show you what our love does. I had a friend in North Carolina who let us borrow that RV that we stayed in, and another friend and his wife, they picked up the RV in North Carolina and they drove it to Miami. It was probably like a 15-hour trip. They drove it there. They wouldn't let us pay for gas. They wouldn't let us pay for anything. Without them, I have no idea what we would have moved into, because the price of living there is insane. And so they delivered that to us. And then when it was time to give the RV back, the owners of the RV, the wife drove to Miami. The husband later that night flew to Miami. They picked it up. They drug it back to North Carolina. Again, just taking care of us, and refused to let us take care of the bills or anything associated with that. When we were in Miami, we were at an RV park, as I said, and we're sharing we have one vehicle. Another buddy of mine that got me the job with the dog company, he let me use his Toyota for like 7 months or something. All of a sudden, he is serving, he is helping, he is providing a way for us to take care of ourselves. And all of a sudden, there's this reality of I was never without supply. The church practically, my friends who love Jesus and love us, they practically took care of us in a way that was very real. I was at a place in lots of those months where I was mad at God. I was wrestling with not understanding His goodness, and why are you letting all these things happen to me? And I don't pretend to have all of that sorted out, but I am starting to see redemption in so many of these moments. And this is just a piece of my story. And you might ask, well, why would you share that, Michael? It's very personal. It's very vulnerable. It's very real life. And I think it's something that makes the gospel real, and it is something that we as a church often do not do. We often don't just let down our vulnerability and share our experiences and share our story with other people. Again, Paul boasted in his weaknesses. He boasted right in his trials, so that the glory of God would be seen. So that's just a piece of my story. And we all have stories. And I could tell you stories of my life of just, man, being on the mountaintop and life being wonderful and life being good. But what I want you to hear in my story is not so much kind of the bad pieces of the things that we went through. I want you to hear that God's church, God's people, they rescued our family in a very practical way. They reached out to us in a very practical way, and we were able to live and get to the other side of that valley because of people very practically reaching out to us. So I want to look at 3 questions today. What is my story? What is your story? 1 Peter 3:15, it says, "But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a difference to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence." But let me ask the question, is there hope within you? Like if you interact with a world that is so hopeless right now, is there hope inside of you? Is there something inside of you, Jesus, that is visible and is tangible and is translatable? Can you articulate your story in such a way that people can see Jesus redeeming and drawing and being sufficient and providing for you? Can you articulate your story that way? Can you share your story in a way that reveals God's active presence and His rescue? So that's my story, but what is His story? What is God's story? John 3:16 says that for God so loved the world that He gave. John Paulson mentioned that last week, that God's love caused Him to give. He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Now, week 1, we talked loving God We talked about loving God with our heart and with our mind. That's part of His story, us integrating our story into His story. What does it look like for us to change our perspective to allow God to run and order our feelings? What does that look like? Week 2, we talked about loving people. What does it look like in a UB4ME kind of thinking that we would prefer others within our body, that we would love others, that we would join a live group, and we would connect with other people, and we would encourage one another? What does that look like in a very practical way? Do you know Jesus' story? Can you present the gospel, not in some theologically deep, kind of way that doesn't connect with most people anyway, but can you share that there was a time when God saw fit to make man and make woman, and shortly after that creation, man and woman basically decided that they had a better plan to break the one rule that God gave them, which was not to eat the fruit of one tree, right? And they believed a lie. We talked about our thinking a couple weeks ago. They believed a lie, and then this feeling that I will be like God. That lie, I will be like God. Imagine how that would feel. Then that affected their actions, right? They acted and they sinned against God, and humanity fell. And so there was generation after generation of sacrifices after that, and God said that sacrificial system was not sufficient. He gave the one man, Jesus, right, as a sacrifice for all of our sins, to pay a price that we couldn't pay, so that we didn't have to perpetually sacrifice something and try to live up to a law that we can't live up to anyway, right? Can you share the gospel? Can you share His story, maybe in concert with your story, in a way that makes the gospel relevant? Jesus, so often, He met the physical needs of people to share His heart. We see that in the feeding of the 5,000, like the fish and the loaves story. You got a couple of fish and a couple of loaves, and Jesus feeds 5,000 people with it just because the boy had a little bit of faith with what was in his hand. He shared what he had. God did a miracle. And we see God's heart through His service to people. We look at miracles, healing the woman with the issue of blood, healing the paralytic that was dropped through a roof while Jesus is speaking, healing a man's son from a distance. The guy comes up and says, "Hey, my son's dead." And basically Jesus said, "Hey, go home. He's alive." And did He do that because He was good at magic tricks? Was that His thing? No. Jesus revealed serving people in practical ways to reveal His heart and the Father's heart. So what if we did that? What if we didn't allow fear, shame, pride to prevent us from sharing our story in concert, in collision with God's story? What if we didn't let fear, busyness, and the need for other people's approval, what if we didn't let those barriers keep us from sharing the story of Jesus? A lot of people around us, they have a story as well. And the third question we're looking at is, what is their story? Do you know the story of people around you? Not just the people around you here today, but do you know the story of your neighbor beside you, the neighbor across the street? Do you know the story of the person who might work beside you, or the boss, maybe that you don't even like? Do you know that they have a story, and maybe why you don't like them is because of their story? Maybe they've had some tough pieces of life, and maybe they don't have hope, and maybe God has put you right in that place to be the hope in your Jerusalem. And what that means by your Jerusalem, like your immediate surrounding area. Maybe your story and God's story can connect with their story, and you can offer hope to them. Jesus said that you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes. So He's about to leave, right? This is in Acts 1:8. He says, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses in both Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, and even to the remotest parts of the earth." Do you have time for other people's story today? Do you have time to care? Do you have time to say, "I will put you before me"? In that story that I was just willing to share, I was hopeless many times. I was angry many times. I was desperate in many ways. But there was no plan B. I got to a point before we rounded the corner where I remember standing outside of an orthodontic office. My wife's inside, my daughter's inside. They're doing the braces thing. And I'm literally just kind of walking around a parking lot, reasonably bored. And I said, "Okay, God, I give up. I've kind of tried to figure it out and do my own thing, and I'm going to stop being God here, trying to be God here. And I submit to you again. And I saw life change in those moments. Because there's no plan B. There was not a plan B of, well, maybe I can write my own story in such a way that'll be better than following Jesus' story that sometimes was pretty painful for me. Where can I cause an intentional opportunity to share my story of redemption and possibly redemption for others? Well, today, Good News Church, as Allie's coming forward to sing with me, today we're partnering with Voice of the Martyrs with med packs. The recipients of these med packs are going, they are brothers and sisters facing persecution and oppression from Islamist extremists in places like Iraq, Sudan, Nigeria, Syrian refugee camps. So in a very practical way, like people help rescued me, just lend a hand to me and my wife and my kids. In a very practical way, we are going to put some feet to our faith, and we're going to impact their story with the story of Jesus. We're going to impact them by meeting some practical needs, just like Jesus did. We're going to offer hope. We're going to serve them. And as Deanna is coming up today to share some practical things, we're going to hope that today that a toothbrush and a gauze pad and a Band-Aid somehow will translate into the gospel of Jesus. So we're going to do a song. Deanna's going to come up. We're going to do some practical, hands-on sharing Jesus with people. But let's pray. Father, this morning, we thank you that you have written your story on our hearts. That you have rescued us, that you have drawn us, that you have called us, that you have given us everything pertaining to life and godliness. Father, that you have allowed your story to be written through the centuries and decades of time in a way that is perceivable to us. We thank you, Lord, that you are a God who rescues. You are a God who is faithful. You're a God who never leaves and never forsakes. Lord, I ask as we practically set up these bags to take care of needs in men and women's lives and boys and girls. We ask that they would see your rescue. You are the source of life. I can't be left behind. No one else will do. I will take hold of you. I need you, Jesus. Come to my rescue. Where else can I go? There's no other name by which I am saved. Capture me with grace. I will follow you. My heart is yours. For life I need your aid. In mine no one else will do. I put my trust in you. I need you, Jesus. Come to my rescue. Tell me where else can I go? There's no other name by which I am saved. Capture me capture me with grace. I will follow you. This world has nothing for me.
I will follow you.
This world has nothing for me.
I will follow you.
This world has nothing for me.
I will follow you.
This world has nothing for me. I need you, Jesus, to come to my rescue. Tell me where else can I go? There's no other name by which I am saved. Capture me with grace. Won't you capture me with grace? I will follow you. I will follow you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for sharing a part of your story and for a great message this morning. If we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Deanna Doe, the Director of Connections, and this is the time of service that we get to put the serve others into action. So the med packs that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks, we get to put them together and mail them to the families that Pastor Michael was talking about. So when they're all said and done, they're gonna look like this. And so on each of the tables there are 15 of these packs. So we're going to recommend that there be 6 or less at a table. And so in just a few minutes, you can pick up your chair and gather around a table. If you're with others other than your family units, we would highly recommend wearing your mask, just for safety reasons there for the COVID stuff. So you're going to take the pack, open it up, and inside is a list of the things that need to go in there. And those items are all the donations that you guys so kindly donated. So thank you very much. So generous. We have such a generous church. But inside the boxes on the table, there's 15 of each item. So you'd get one item in the bag there. So you can see that there's tape, soap, gauze pads, Band-Aids, a toothbrush, a comb or brush, and a wash rag that goes in there. So when you open it up, there is a sticker you can see on the front here. You'll put that on the front. It says the Family Med Pack. You'll pack up your bag, and then the string that's there, you will loop it around the little loop here on there. And then it comes with the white envelope. So you're gonna open that up and put the bag inside of it, but please do not tear off and seal the envelope. Just leave that open. Then we will have some boxes lined up here, and once your bags are done, you can put them in the boxes. And then if you have a shortage of an item or something that's missing in there, Amanda and myself will be walking around, so if you have a question or need an item, let us know and we'll try to help you out with that. And then we will be packing them up in boxes, and later this week we'll be shipping them to Voice of the Martyrs. So so excited. Like Pastor Michael was saying, we think of these things that we take for granted: a toothbrush, a bar of soap, a Band-Aid, and this is really going to go to families who are in need and don't have a toothbrush and don't get to brush their teeth every day or shower with soap. It's an amazing thing, and we get to serve the world and make a difference in someone's life. So thank you so much for sticking around and helping us pack these and make a difference in someone's life. So I think we'll go ahead and pick up a chair, find a table, and move around, and we'll get started.
I
been running in circles, jumping the hurdles, getting caught in that rush of doing so much. I'm feeling kind of worn out. All this checking the boxes, trying to be flawless, has me spinning my head, catching my breath, too afraid to slow down. I tell myself to keep this up, that God wants more than just my love. But I've been complicating things, it's just like me to overthink. Gotta keep it real simple, keep it real simple, bring everything right back to ground zero. Cause it all comes down to this: love God and love people. We're living in a world that keeps breaking, but if we wanna find a way to change it, it all comes down to this: love God and love people. Oh, this is freedom, freedom, the keys to the kingdom. Knowing life will be found when love can be loud, 'cause love is what it's all about. I tell myself to keep this up, that all God wants is just my love. No more complicated things, no more need to overthink. Gotta keep it real simple, keep it real simple, bring everything right back to ground zero. Cause it all comes down to this: love God and love people. We're living in a world that keeps breaking, but if we wanna find a way to change it, it all comes down to this: love God and love people. Love is patient, love is kind, rescues hearts and changes lives. Love is all we need to make things right. Gotta keep it real simple. It's really so simple. Gotta keep it real simple, keep it real simple, bring everything right back to ground zero. Cause it all comes down to this: love God and love people. We're living in a world that keeps breaking, but if we wanna find a way to change it, it all comes down to this: love God and love people. Keep on loving, keep on loving. Love God and love people. So keep on loving, keep on loving. It's all about love, it's how we change the world. Love God and love people. I am not skilled to understand what God has willed, what God has planned. I only know at His right hand stands one who is my Savior. I take Him at His word. Christ died to save me, this I read. And in my heart I find a need of Him to be my Savior. That He will leave His place on high and come for sinful men to die. You got a strange soul once dead. soaring high.